Hey, team players, welcome to another episode from Local Football Flavor, where we're going to be giving you fantasy advice and fantasy knowledge from people who win leagues in and out. In today's episode, we are doing a challenge mode from Bob, who's drafting here in the 4 spot. He wants to try to build a successful team with both Kelsey and Andrews. I told him it's statistically impossible, but the challenge is on. So, Bob, tell me how we're going to make this happen.
So here's the plan. The plan is obviously to draft Kelsey in the first round. It's going to throw people off to get him in at number 4, probably. People aren't going to be happy about it. But the reasoning is that you can run 1 tight end, 1 flex, or 2 flex in this league. And to get Mark Andrews is being kind of written off as the second tight end. People are also talking about Sam Laporta, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson. We're not so far removed from a great year from Mark Andrews, where he was at tight end 1 instead of Kelsey. And there's nothing in the rule book to say you can't draft 2 tight ends early.
No, because you can do a flex.
So the plan here is to go Kelsey in the first, get a good solid player in the second, and hopefully come back around in the third and take Mark Andrews. It's probably going to make a lot of people mad, and they're probably going to quit the mock. But there is, if I'm taking the 2 best at the position, or what we think is the 2 best at the position, it's hard to fight that amount of points. That tight ends do provide solid production. There's not going to be much variation.
The top 4 do
on a week-to-week basis here from these top tight ends. So I'm just curious how this is going to turn out. I wouldn't do this probably in my actual league unless I can see what can come out.
Oh, that's what mocks are. They're for experimenting and learning. Does this strategy work? Because the other reality is you now have immense trade bait having the only other asset at that position, assuming no one like Hawkinson or Freiermuth or no one else of that ilk steps up to Adam's world. You could have a chance of building something special here. And if you go completely crazy and stack Kelsey, which I'm smart you didn't, and glad you didn't, because that would kill your team. Giving your chance with a running back there can actually build something around it. Because to conclude my point here is I got thrown off with your second pick there. When you have the top 2 assets at a position, you have immense leverage because everyone has to start 1 tight end. You could potentially pull a trade that is out of this world crazy because they need the player.
Yeah, and I'm not so much, if I were to do this in my actual league, I'm not so much sold on that I would have to do that. I'm just hoping with these 2 next picks that Mark Andrews doesn't go.
So we can see what it looks like for the sake of the episode, of the drill, if you will.
So we can see what it would look like here.
And I got to tell you, I don't normally like drafting in the first spot. But as an aside here from what Bob's doing, getting McCaffrey, Olave, and Higgins, I'm not too upset with that.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, here's the thing that you'll be sitting at is if you're drafting in the 10th in a 10-team league and you're in the 3rd round, your choices are Mahomes, Jacobs, Allen Hurts, Stevenson, Hall, Najee. If you're not happy with that, you don't like it, buck the trend. Take the 2 players that you think are going to be consistent scorers, and people are going to go crazy for it.
It's a fact. If bucking the trend anytime in your draft ends up being tremendously powerful in the long run. And yes, because it looks different, every other pick is blue or green because they're a running back or a tight end.
Notice the quarterback hasn't been taken yet.
It's something that puts people in an alert mode. Like, oh, why are you different? Well, get out of that second grade mindset and be not afraid to go with the herd. You know, Albert Einstein invented the atomic bomb, and he said the most powerful force on this universe is peer pressure. Get out of the zone, buck the trend, win your league.
We have Jacobs, Najee, Gibbs, Stevenson, Etienne. All of those guys have a lot of things that didn't go well for them last year. They're a rookie this year. and we're projecting them to do better in the coming year. So Mark Andrews is perfectly one of those players that could take another step forward if we have a healthy Lamar Jackson with us in tow. Now, the question is, Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts are still available. Are they going to be taken? Or am I going to have to go really crazy in this regard?
No, Bob, build a team that's successful. Don't completely sabotage yourself. Make the drill successful. Make a winning team with the 2 elite tight ends.
All right, so Jerry Jeudy went. I love Jerry Jeudy. It seems like Breece Hall is going to be there potentially. So taking 2 running backs that may not play at the beginning of the season, probably not a great start. Okay, so let's take a look here. Oh, man. TJ Hawkinson's looking good at number 4. Oh, man. I think I know who I'm going to go with here if he doesn't get taken right here.
So who are you thinking right here?
If he doesn't get taken, Aaron Jones is the play in this regard. Yeah.
Because Aaron Jones is a stable running back, and you know what you're going to get out of him. He's the stalwart of the Packers.
Mm-hmm. And there you go with Joe Burrow. Josh Allen is still on the board. So, Joe, you've come into the.
No, there he goes. There he goes.
There goes Lamar on the board still as well. And so this is what we were saying. If you happen to watch our episode about the quarterback situation, quarterbacks tend to fall in this spot, and value wise, you might say, "Oh, should I take them? Should I not?" It's a really tough decision to make. And now I'm into another tough decision.
You have to go receiver. You don't have an option.
We got 2 flexes. I can go TJ Hawkins. I'm not going to be that crazy, though. I could do it. But the value's there. Look at all the other players around there.
You can certainly make
Team 4 is lost in the sauce. Yes, I am.
And I'm glad Hawkinson went, so you can't do anything stupid there. But
yeah, dude, I'm not seeing.
You can go with your boy Drake London. Might be a little bit of a reach here, but you can certainly do that. Having the 3 solid running backs is immensely powerful. Because when we look around the rest of your draft strategy, is that if you are in a league.
I don't think it's a bad team, though.
Returning to the conversation of Bob building the 2 tight end build, as we see with Kelsey, Taylor, Andrews, Jones, Mixon, Sanders, and Brown. Bob, looking at your team, my question for you is what most people are going to say, what's up with the 4th running back in the 6th round when you don't have a receiver on the team? You still do need to start 2 receivers.
So the reason for the 4th running back there is all for what my bias is towards Joe Mixon and also with the situation with Jonathan Taylor. When you go into a season and you take a running back that is potentially might hold out, you also have a running back that has a legal issue and may not be as good as we think he is, but at the value there, it's hard to pass him up in the 5th round there. The only other choice for me in my mind at that 5th spot with Joe Mixon would be Drake London, who's the guy who went directly after it. But I've been knocked on picking Drake London as my number 1 wide receiver before. So I'm just actually trying something different here. And I don't think that taking Miles Sanders there is actually a bad spot. It provides you a little bit of running back security because the running back situation in Carolina, it's really suspect when it comes to the backups. Like Chuba Hubbard is really not that good. And we know that team is going to run the ball a bit. And Sanders is a very capable running back. Getting him in the 6th round as some makeshift kind of four running backs here. We've got 4 running backs that are potentially bell cows of their team and teams that are probably going to run it more than we think they're going to run it. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I get what you're saying there. It's a good point.
And so coming back around, the value, you'll notice that when I took Mixon, there was only 6 wide receivers taken after that. One of them is Debo, who I have 0 interest in. One of them is Hopkins, who I have 0 interest in as well, knowing the situation in Tennessee. One of them is Watson. Watson is gaining interest from me. However, I don't like I don't like that he drops passes. Godwin, I'm not so interested in. I could be enticed to take him. And DJ Moore, I'm not very interested in as well either. And so when it comes down to it, Mixon was the play there if it wasn't Drake London.
Going back into the challenge that we put at Bob, draft both Kelsey and Andrews and make a successful team. So, Bob, looking at your roster, Kelsey, Taylor, Andrews as your flex, Jones from Green Bay as your second running back, starting receivers, Hollywood Brown, Kirk, Prescott, with on your bench being Mixon, Miles Sanders, Deontay Johnson, Cooks, and Elijah Moore. I've seen a whole lot worse teams than that. How do you feel looking at this? And also, as a bigger question, going into any given Sunday with your flex being either Mark Andrews, Mixon, Sanders, or Deontay Johnson, or Cooks, how often is Andrews going to get that spot? That's a loaded two-part question, but it's what we need to ask when we make this build.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is important to note about this build is that I feel like this is despite going 2 tight ends early, that it's a fairly balanced team when it comes to PPR and just receptions in general.
Mm-hmm.
Andrews provides you with a very high floor on a game-to-game basis. A lot of targets are going his way. Yes, Lamar has Odell Beckham now, also has Zay Flowers now. But in the red zone, what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at Lamar to Andrews, and we're also looking at Lamar running it in.
Mm-hmm.
And so if Andrews goes and just takes a week off, there's never a time where Andrews wouldn't slot into your lineup if you were running a single tight end in your roster.
Yeah, that's true.
You're drafting Andrews as a single tight end in your roster.
But now in this scenario, he's not fighting them. He's fighting all positions as a flex.
Yes, he's fighting all positions as a flex. And if you take a look at what's happening here, I took a lot of guys from Sanders on that I think are going to get volume or targets in the red zone and or just volume targets in general. Now, we've had a lot of discussions about Deontay versus George Pickens. We've had a lot of discussions about Christian Kirk's value in versus Calvin Ridley. And we've had a lot of discussions about Hollywood Brown being the only show in town, essentially. Not so featured in the red zone, but we don't think that...
Well, Arizona doesn't belong in the red zone.
In the red zone anyway. So these players have some high upside value. I think the decisions oftentimes being made will be whether it's Marquise Brown, Christian Kirk, or Deontay Johnson starting in the wide receiver slot.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't think that there's going to be a day, if you were to construct a lineup like this, where you would want to take Mark Andrews out of your lineup. There's a very good possibility that Mark Andrews in any one game could get you 8 targets, 60 yards, and a touchdown.
At least, yeah.
And there's a good chance that maybe he gets 4 for 80 or 60 and no touchdown. But still, you're kind of evening itself out. Now, going back to the build in general, when you take a look at where Mark Andrews is being drafted at typically, your options are taking the first quarterback off the board, either Mahomes or Hurts, maybe even the second one. A lot of running backs that outside of Najee have some things that we're not very sure about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, with Jacobs' issue, Gibbs is splitting time maybe with Montgomery. Stevenson, what's he going to do without Harris there, and Etienne in general?
Oh, Stevenson's going to ball.
Yeah, that's what we think. Then you've got, typically speaking, Stevenson won't be there.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Then you've got Allen, McLaurin, Metcalf, Judy, and Ridley. Out of all of those guys, typically Judy is... I was thinking that Judy would fall to that 4 slot, 4-7, where I was at, and I would have taken Jerry Judy right there instead of Aaron Jones. I thought Aaron Jones was going to go ahead, as he typically does.
Sure.
But you adjust. Out of those 4-5 wide receivers, Calvin Ridley and Jerry Jeudy would be my guy. But at the 3-4 slot, that's a little bit, like you were saying earlier, too early. And Mark Andrews is a guy that if you take Kelsey and he's still there when you're there, you can still build a very decent, if not championship caliber team, depending on how the others fall. Because again, at the second tight end, you're zigging when everybody's zagging. Mm-hmm. They're thinking that you're not going to take it. They're thinking that Mark Andrews is going to be there, that TJ Hawkinson is going to be there. If you take them, obviously they're not there. People are going to get a little bit upset, and they're just waiting. See, all of those tight ends now fell.
That was a result of that, yeah.
Right? All of them are falling. But where those players are taken, you look at the value coming back around. So if Devonta Smith was still there when it was my choice, that would have been a really tough decision to take Mark Andrews over Devonta Smith. If Chris Olave was there, that would have been a really tough decision as well. So it all depends on who's there on the board at the same time. If Derrick Henry was still there, that would have been a really tough decision to go ahead and take Mark Andrews. But if they're not, why not?
Because it's a very hard team in general to make a winner with Andrews. He's just by being the third round pick in general, it's hard to. But somehow it's weird seeing it with Kelsey. Actually might make it a more productive team. And also, Bob, this has to go with a lot of the fact that you were able to make very good picks and not taking the garbage at receiver in the 4th through 6th round that so many people are gobbling up. You did not end up taking an Amari Cooper or a Deebo Samuel. You didn't end up selecting more from Chicago. You ended up making very good decisions, especially at the running back spot. And when we look at your receivers on the back end, again, 4 of them in Hollywood, Kirk, Deontay, and Cooks, you have yourself the number 1 or number 2 on 4 NFL teams. There will be targets thrown your way, and you're not going to be hurting at the receiver. In a lot of ways, what I think I learned from your build, Bob, was the receiver position, while they can give you great upside points, at the end of the day, it's still a fluff and a potential spot. And maybe tight end is closer to a bedrock helping you win spot than the receiver is.
So here's the last thing I want to say about wide receivers in general. Those top 2 round guys are your, I won't say unicorn wide receivers, but they're your wide receivers that are going to give you both touchdowns and yards and receptions.
That's true. The top 2 rounds are they. That is true.
Once you get 4 through 9, you're looking at guys that are either getting volume or they're getting touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And Marquise Brown, Christian Kirk, Deontay Johnson are all volume-based players. Deontay Johnson being a guy that was used in the red zone. Unfortunately, the Steelers didn't score in the red zone last year.
Mm-mm.
Christian Kirk, we did a breakdown about how Christian Kirk was utilized in the red zone, but with Calvin Ridley there, he might not.
I think he's going to have a better year with Ridley. I think that team's scoring a lot more points.
And Marquise Brown, Arizona's probably not going to get in the red zone, but he's the guy that's going to get them.
When they do, he's going to be the one who scores.
And then Brandon Cooks, pairing him with Dak at the very back end there.
He might be comeback player of the year, Brandon Cooks.
There's a very good chance that we have seen Cooks' best days, but as a 4th wide receiver on a team where you're not starting Brandon Cooks. Like, you're not forced to start him. I didn't take him as my flex. I'm not forced to start him. If you go through these teams right here in a 10-team league, I have probably the best flex. All right. Hey, local football flavor fans. This is Bob here. Thanks for watching the episode. If you stayed all the way through, give us a like, subscribe to our channel. We're going to be pumping NFL content to you out through the season. Fantasy football, player news, player information, game content, coaches film. We have it all here at Local Football Flavor. If you want to share your opinion with us, please do so. Give us a comment, send us an email, watch a couple of our videos on our YouTube channel to see what we're all about. We want to hear from you. We want to interact with you. So remember, if you were here, watch the whole video. Please join us for the next one.